Today is April Fool's Day, and April Fool's means spring is here. And I got so excited that I wet my plants. So, have you ever fallen for any of those April Fool's Day pranks? And when you did you feel like a fool? So, we're going to go with this theme today, Tara and I, and we're going to talk about those moments where we feel like a fool, those really tough feelings of shame, embarrassment, and humiliation. And that can make us feel like we just want to hide away, like we never want to show our face again, stay in a cave, never try again, never put ourselves out there again, right? They're really tough feelings. And so today we're going to talk about what to do when you feel like that. And I'm willing to look like a fool to get in a few April Fool's jokes. So, Tara, knock, knock.
Who's there?
Wooden shoe.
Wooden shoe who?
Wouldn't you like to share your thoughts on this?
I love it. Yes, yes, I would. That's so good. I really love the fact that you brought up the experience that so many people have when they're made to feel like a fool or they just feel like a fool. It's that like rising of your blood pressure, the feeling that you want to shrink back. You just feel this shame and everybody's looking and laughing at you, right? And sometimes people do it on purpose, right? And it's so interesting because I feel like I can feel like a fool often. I think that comes from a space of really being an introvert, very much an observer, somebody who likes to have intimate one-to-one conversation that's meaningful,
Mm.
but you can't always have the stage set really perfectly. Sometimes it's not set perfectly and you still need to talk, and you need to talk to people who maybe don't feel so safe.
Mm.
And that's how I used to feel, like going to new groups or networking or just big crowded things, because you don't really know the person and maybe you're having to talk in front of different people. And I found that I would go in and almost be like tongue tied because it just felt like, well, I'm going to say things and they're not going to know where I'm coming from because maybe how I talk isn't necessarily how they understand things. And so I've often uh, felt like that. And in the end, I just started just saying it's okay if I flub up. It's okay that I'm just going to go out and I'm going to meet people and I'm going to ask questions about them. I'm going to be truly interested. And it's wild because when I stopped making it all about me and what I needed to share and what I needed to get across, and I went everywhere getting all about being very interested in others, um, it helped me to calm down. It also lended towards what they wanted to share anyway, because they wanted to talk about themselves. It tends to be that way, and especially networking. But people like to share. And so if I was willing to be interested, it just calmed everything down. So that's what I've done to deal with this feeling of feeling like a fool often in my life. So I don't know if that brought up anything for you.
Yeah, I love that you talked about, this feeling of being an introvert and, wondering if how you talk is going to register properly. And I know that our society, and in order to, put yourself out there and fit in, our society values extrovertedness, outgoingness, it feels like that opens the doors for opportunities. And so for me, it's interesting because I like to know why. I'm really into that sort of, reasoning and how our brain developed. And so this whole feeling like a fool, to me, it's because we're a social species and we have very strong programs inside of us that says fit in and be liked. And if your mind thinks that your safety is being threatened, it's going to throw all sorts of mind BS at you to keep you from ever doing that again. Like, so your mind BS is telling you, how I talk. I'm not sure if I'm going to communicate right. I'm not sure if I'm going to remember what I need to say. I'm going to get all tongue tied. And it's kind of cool because it's actually a superpower of your mind to be able to recognize a threat and keep you safe from it. But it doesn't differentiate between a physical threat and a social threat because when your brain was evolving, those were the same. Like
Hmm.
if you got cast out of your social group, you were going to die, right? You
Hmm.
needed that
Hmm.
group in order to stay alive. And so to me, that's why we have such a strong reaction. And what you're talking about, like this face flushing and heartbeat going up, that's a fight or flight. Your
Hmm.
body is putting you into fight or flight, not safe. There's a threat, run
Hmm.
away, get
Hmm.
away, or fight, right? Come in
Right.
there and attack the situation. And so we have to see it as a nervous system response. And I love that you came up with a plan. You had a plan. You're to fix your nervous system response, right? You said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask them about them. And
Hmm.
that is a way for you to integrate into your group without having to deal with all of those stressors that you have. And in order to be able to step into a very tough situation and take an action.
Hmm.
So I think having a plan is a amazing way to get through this. Do you have anything to add to that, or do you want me to
I
keep going?
do, because you mentioned about, your tribe, and that's what makes you safe. And one of the things that I say to clients who suffer with this is before they can get to the place of asking other people questions is to bring an anchor person. So like bring a tribe member, right? Like somebody who's close to you, who you feel safe with, to different events. Or at least let's say you can't. Like there's definitely things where I can't always call somebody and say, "Can you go to this with me?"
Mhm.
What I do is before I go in, like really integrate myself into whatever group it is, I look for somebody who feels safe to me. So I'm a huge advocate that we are intuitive beings and we don't just know where there's a threat, we know where there's safety. So look for that safe person. At least just know that they're in the room or go meet them first. And it's not necessarily the person who's smiling, it's something that your system knows, right? You don't necessarily get body cues. It's just if you go up to that person, do they feel safe? Knowing that they're in the room helps you to know that you're anchored into somebody else who's also just makes you feel like you can be there and it's all okay. So that helps for a lot of my clients because they maybe aren't going in with all the questions and so on. They might be great listeners. Some people don't ever need any questions. They're just going to talk. And that can be really good for somebody who feels like they don't want to talk or they feel like a fool if they do open their mouth. Just let somebody else talk and take it all in. Be present. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. The idea of bringing a safe person in there, like that is such a great way to address that nervous system issue, right? Because if
Hmm.
you've got someone there with you, you've got an ally, it's
Hmm.
going to be a whole lot less scary. That is brilliant. And so, what I find most powerful, I teach in my mind BS method, is there's two streams. And
Hmm.
stream number one is to get that mind BS under control. And stream number two is to get that nervous system under control.
Hmm.
And so, I love that what we're talking about here is those two streams put together.
Hmm.
And so you've got that nervous system piece, you've got that plan, you've got that, safe person there, or using your intuitive knowing to find a safe person. I think that's absolutely beautiful. And then what happens so that's a great way to address it. It's almost like it's preventing it, right? You're preventing that feeling of feeling like a fool. But what happens when you've done it? You've put your foot in your mouth, or somebody has, done something that has made you feel those feelings of shame and humiliation. How can we get out of it? And I think that when we talk, you're going to address the nervous system side. So I'm going to quickly address the mind BS side and see what you have to say about it. Because my first thing is, you get through the situation, you get through the threat. And then for me, I'm lying in bed. And that's when my mind BS goes nuts and tells me how stupid I am and how, terrible I handled this situation and what I should have done instead. And so my big question that I ask my mind then is it true? Is
Hmm.
it true that, I put my foot in my mouth? Is it true that, all of those mind BS things like, people will never like you, people are never going to trust you again, people are never going to believe you again, people aren't going to invite you to these things again? Is it true?
Mm-hmm.
And then my next question is, what would I have done differently? And that goes to your plan, like you were talking about, right? Oh, if I had a safe person, or if I had a plan going in. But for me, what I find is often nothing. There's often nothing that I would have done differently. I spoke up my voice. I did the tough thing. I gave my opinion, and I'm proud of myself for that. So it ends up turning into something that allows me to process the situation in a very rational and less feelingsy, less fight or flighty kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
How would you address that feeling of, oh my goodness, I feel so much shame and humiliation?
I love your question. Is it true? I think that we need to ask that often. And is it true for me, right? Like, is it really true for me that I shouldn't have said that or whatever? I love that. And then the other piece is I like to do two things. One, look at another time in my life where I feel like I've made a fool of myself and look at, did that ruin my life?
Mm,
Right? Like just reflect on that. Did it help? Sometimes it helps. Like maybe I made better friends. Maybe I laughed it off and, came home and I didn't barrage myself, or I did, but it all worked out, right? Or it just didn't kill me, right? Sometimes it doesn't necessarily expand your life, but it doesn't ruin it. But the other thing is to really look at other people for a moment. Like take my mind off of myself and look at other people, whether it's your spouse, your friends, your kids who have made mistakes, made a fool of themselves, and also look at that their lives haven't imploded. And so it brings us back to that piece of being part of something whole. We're not this thing that's been cast off to the side. And we're so bad that we're not part of something. Everybody makes a fool of themselves at different times. And most of the time, we just go, oh, it's not a big deal if it's anyone else.
right.
But bringing that back to ourselves is like, well, if you're going to have that attitude towards someone else, like, oh, well, it's already over. Like, what's the big deal? You can have that with yourself as well. So to me, there's a part of that that's celebration. It's like celebrating you survived that and, you know, you're thriving still so that you don't go into that whole mind BS. Yeah.
I
Mm-hmm.
love that. You just took something that is a giant threat and turned
Mm-hmm.
it into, something completely small and not threatening.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And
Yeah.
you did that by looking around you at all of the others. And it makes total sense that you're going to feel the threat on yourself, right? Because your mind wants to keep you safe. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't care about anybody else. It's not going to have a big fight or flight reaction to anybody else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that way of just combining your mind and your nervous system there, right? You're using your mind to calm your nervous system. And one thing that I find really helpful is movement.
Mm-hmm.
I find that that almost completes the stress response.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people are like, when I'm instructing people to move and do something, and movement can just be, sitting down. It doesn't have to be a big workout. Like people talk about exercise completing the stress cycle. It can be any sort of movement. While you're doing that movement, focus on the truth that you just uncovered, right?
Mm-hmm.
As you're doing it, just concentrate on that, where it's like, you know what? Like for me, I often put my foot in my mouth. That's my most feeling like a fool moment, is I've just said the wrong thing at the wrong time. And I can concentrate on the fact that, you know what? I authentically shared my voice. I authentically shared my opinion. I was kind, I was, truthful. And even though maybe it didn't land the right way, I am proud of myself for doing that. I do not want to be silenced. And so as I'm moving around, I can think about all of those things. I can listen to a song that's empowering, that's about sharing your voice and move around. And I feel like that just takes all of that stress, all of that shame, and it just puts it away. What
Mhm.
works for you?
I do. I love movement. We talk about a lot of different movements with different emotions in the courses that I lead, and it helps because emotions are energy in motion. And so if you can allow them to not get clogged in your system, it's really good. But also listening to the message of it. I think there's times where we do put our foot in our mouth and it was all good intention and lovely. And then there's other times where you put your foot in your mouth and maybe you did hurt somebody unintentionally. And it's okay to apologize, right? It's okay to take the other person into account and just say, oh gosh, that came off in a way that I can see rubbed you the wrong way or, hit you the wrong way. And you can do that in the moment. And if you don't have the words in the moment, you can always do it later as well. So taking into account it's not just always about us. It is about relationships and really caring for the other person without throwing ourselves under the bus. Everybody does this thing where they say things in it's intended one way and taken another. It just happens in life, right? But if we let ourselves off the hook and then truly with meaning apologize and take that in as a learning for other times, I think it's important. It brings me to I've had times where I've definitely felt like a fool myself, but then there's times where I think others have made me feel like a fool.
Mm.
And I think those are harder because you're almost startled into this very different experience. And I remember in college, um, I was a part of a really tight-knit group and I felt safe with them. And then one night I did not feel safe. And it was because of this. So at the time, I still don't like follow all the labels and stuff and why things happen. But at the time when I was in college, there were certain sweatshirts that I loved to wear. They just made me feel safe. And I didn't realize that I wore them a lot, right? Like they just were kind of my uniform. And so one night I was planning on going to this group with all my friends and I'm looking for this sweatshirt and the sweatshirt's like it's gone. And so I'm kind of going around my apartment with all my dorm or my college roommates and I'm like, I can't find my sweatshirt. And so I'm a little off and wore something else. And I go in and it was a night that like I had to get up in front of everybody and like talk to. And I look across the room and I was like, oh wow, somebody was in what I thought was a similar sweatshirt, right? And so I was like, oh my gosh, that looks like my sweatshirt. And I couldn't find my sweatshirt. And they didn't say anything, but they were laughing behind my back, right? But these were all my friends. So their intention wasn't at all to hurt me. Their intention was to like, I don't know, get my goat, right? Like to like razz me up. But it totally didn't feel that way. And when I found out that that's what was going on, I needed to take care of myself. So I left. And I think a lot of times we think that in the taking care of self, that we're doing something wrong, that we should laugh it off, that we should just fold into the fun. But for me, it was, whoa, this was very different from how I expected my friends to act. And so I left. I did cry and like I went back home and at that point I was like, I don't even know if I'm getting my sweatshirt back. This is literally my favorite sweatshirt. And it kind of rocked me to the core because I was like, oh, so like people are paying that much attention to me that they need to remove something that I love so that I don't wear it anymore. And going back to your question about is that the truth? I had to like this was not just a short-term thing. For a lot of years, I had to ask myself, like, does that matter? What other people think? Is it okay if like I wear things often? Is it okay if I'm not um doing what other people want me to do? Is it okay if they find that funny or want to make fun? And this is part of really owning your own truth. And it doesn't happen like instantly. You don't just go, yeah, I'm gonna wear it, because then that's like almost an armor that goes up. And to me, I was very vulnerable, but in the end, I was like, if things are important to me, I'm gonna take care of myself. I'm gonna remove myself. Now, I didn't like, they were still my friends, and I did let them know that it hurt. It wasn't funny in the way that they intended. And I did let them know also, I understand that your intention was this, but it totally didn't land that way at all. I feel like you were making a fool of me in front of everybody new and everybody that I loved. And I don't want this to happen ever again to myself or anyone. And what I said was to myself or anyone else, because you need to look at your intentions aren't always landing that way with the person. But for me, it also really made me conscious of some of my choices and that they're not always going to be favored by others, and that's okay. I'm still going to choose what makes me feel loved and nurtured and held. And sometimes that's clothes. Like the clothes that we wear are not just an expression of ourselves, but they are like a kindness to ourselves. And that doesn't have to do with anyone else's opinion. So, um, it's a process. I think it's a process. I don't think that we get to just snap our fingers sometimes when we feel like a fool. Like it's a process of nurturing ourselves back to that place of love and kindness, and I always go to like hands-on. Like there's a part of me that sometimes we need to be held, and I say like hold yourself, like put your hands on, close your eyes, and just breathe in that space of I've got me, even if it feels like I was just thrown out to the wolves. Yeah.
Wow, that is a powerful story. I really love that question. Is it okay?
Mm-hmm.
Right? That is standing in your own power. You get to decide if you feel it's okay, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the next person standing next to you might have a completely different outlook on that, but you get to be true to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, oh, I think that is the most powerful tool that we're going to learn today, right? Is it true and is it okay? Is it
Mm-hmm.
okay for me? And I love that you worked through your process, right? You experienced the situation, you went through your mind BS. Is it true? Is it okay? You processed it, you cried, you processed your feelings, and then you took a brave action and you moved into those courageous conversations. And those courageous conversations can lead to something amazing and reconnect, but it can also make the feeling of shame and vulnerability come back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Depending on how they react. And you now have the process to be able to move yourself through that. And the other thing that you said that I actually wrote down is I am going to choose what makes me feel nurtured and loved. That is the ultimate goal. That is the opposite of mind BS, because in those same conversations that you were having in your head, you were saying, maybe I should just brush it off. Maybe I should, just pretend it's not a big deal. Those shoulds are your mind BS coming in and saying, just stay part of this tribe, stay part of this group. It's okay. Let it happen. But you are so in tune with yourself that you are able to say, you know what? I choose me. I choose to nurture me. I choose to honor me. And I choose to take courageous action in order to do that. And I think that's the crux of it. I think we've hit our beautiful solution there.
I do too. I think it's so important to do that because you mentioned earlier about fitting in. And when we're fitting in, we're generally cutting off parts of ourselves in order to do that. right? And so if I don't really belong with you with all my feelings and all my needs and everything else, um, I need to belong to myself. And so that act of what do I need to do in this moment? Like, and usually your body is screaming at you to do something, right? And honoring that, like honoring leaving or honoring laughing, what each person does is up to them. Taking a breather, coming back in, taking a breather and not coming back in. It takes practice too of listening because I think some people have taught themselves a knee-jerk reaction, which is, how do I fit in? How do I stay here and act as though this didn't affect me? And I think that that's having a deeper effect on a lot of people because essentially we're doing it to ourselves as well. So first, other people made us feel awkward and unloved, essentially, right? The fool. And then we did it to ourselves. And I didn't realize we would get this deep today, but when you don't belong to yourself, there's so many people who no longer want to live. Because if you can't belong to yourself, what's it worth? Right. And so I think that the bravest thing that we can do is to say, what do I need to do in this moment for me?
Yeah.
And to own that. And if you walk, you just own it. And then you nurture yourself until you can have a conversation again in whatever form that is. But beginning to own those decisions and being okay with it. And hopefully, there's at least one person who supports your decision to take care of yourself, right? And we do that without like throwing blame or shade or shame or anything like that, but also like taking the walk and going like, I say own it because so many people, including myself, have made those choices and then paired it with guilt
Mm,
instead of just saying, this might look awkward. This might not look right. This might not be what I really want to do. Like, I want to just shrug this off. But the most powerful thing that I can do is listen to the screaming in my body that says, staying here right now is not safe. And I need to go put myself in somewhere that is safe and nurturing for me for the time being. And to do that with knowing that that's powerful instead of foolish,
yes.
right? Um, is a game changer. And then you belong to yourself in a way that nobody can take away from you.
Ooh, I love that. Yeah, that is the truth of the moment. The truth of the moment is I took care of myself. I loved
Mhm,
myself. I did what was right for me. Those
mhm.
are the truths that I'm talking about sinking into. And you just
Yeah,
said it so eloquently. And I have to acknowledge that I am so impressed that you were at this stage in college and that you were able to do that for yourself in college because I did not learn that until my 30s. And so I am thrilled that this healthy outlook started young. And that's our goal, is to ripple that into the next generation so that our kids have these tools so that they can process and deal with all of these, trials and tribulations of regular life.
absolutely.
Okay, so that did go very deep.
Yeah.
One quick joke to lighten it, and then we'll go
Yes.
into our last thoughts. Okay, when does an April Fool's joke become a dad joke? As
When
it becomes apparent. All
Yeah.
right, any last thoughts as we sum up what to do when you feel like a fool?
I think the first thing is everybody has that experience. And so take care of yourself. And I do love to come back to yours. Is it really true? And even if it is true, take care of yourself. Like, it's okay. I've made a fool of myself, even all by myself on the daily. So, yeah. How about you? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, for me, it's very similar. It's combining that, the nervous system very consciously, the nervous system and the thoughts. And the is it true is not about did I make a fool of myself? It's those downstream effects that we tell ourselves that I can never show my face there. I am not
Mhm.
worthy of being these people's friends, or these people are not my friends. These people don't love me.
Hmm.
Those are the things that our mind is going to tell us now. And we need to really examine those and see if those are actual brilliance or BS, and
Hmm.
figure out what the truths are and sink into those so that we can make our next steps. We can decide our plan for moving forward from this place of shame and vulnerability.
I love it.
So,
Thank you.
all right, wonderful. Thank you so much. This has been a super fun conversation about what to do when you feel like a fool. So,
Mhm.
Tara, where can people find you?
Easiest place is taramccullum.com. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. Um, no other vowel other than A's in my name. So even if you want to put a U or an O in there, they're all A's. So how about you? Where can they find you?
Yeah, people can find me on Facebook. You can find me in my Blissfully Busy Facebook group, and my website, mindbs.ca. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will talk to you next time. Bye.
Ah.
Ready to uplevel your boundary game? Discover your personal boundary style at mindbs.ca/boundary style.